Welcome to States and Kingdoms. Today we're talking about the Ramones and their album End of the Century.
It's been a long time since we've done a Ramones album. The last one we did was Subterranean Jungle. I bet you didn't remember that.
I did. I bet you'll cut it out and re-edit it so it looks like I didn't know.
Anyway.
Truth!
And it's been a long time. And that's because we only do the things that you want to do.
It seems like it. This is kind of my channel.
So, finally we get back to the Ramones. End of the century.
Finally.
And I wanted to talk about this before.
This is a very controversial... This is a very controversial album among Ramones fans.
Well, I would say it would be the most controversial, I guess. And it's not controversial. It's just I would say the one that most Ramones fans would disagree about probably the most.
Well, you know what's interesting about Phil Spector? You could say that he did, 2 rock and roll albums. I mean, that are mixed for the fans.
So maybe they could do End of the Century naked. That'd be good.
Please don't.
Yeah, I know.
I don't even like that.
Well, you can't bring that. You can't bring Let It Be up because people get angry about that one too.
I don't care. How about that?
Anyway, that one actually is more controversial. Don't look at the camera. Imagine the camera is something friendly, like a firing squad. I'm not really conflicted about this record. I mean, I understand, I've listened to it a billion times still. Every Ramones album is special in some way. Every for any, I've said this before, and I really believe it. If a band is this good, they don't put out anything.
No, even
that's
even
not
their
worth listening to.
Weakest album is still gonna have lots of gems.
And I feel that way about a number of bands.
Yeah,
we've said that about the Beach Boys. We've said it about Genesis, of course. I mean, even at their sort of their weakest, they're still so good. What?
I want to say the album, but it might make them mad.
Oh, the weakest Genesis album?
Yeah, I won't say it.
Yeah.
Stay tuned for it. That'll be in another video.
It's Dark Side of the Moon. Anyway.
Well, what's funny about this album is you listen to the Ramones a lot more than me. At least earlier. Earlier on, you listened to them a lot more than me. Mm-hmm. When I did start listening to them, this album really caught me more than some of the others. And I don't know what it is. There's something about this record that I really actually enjoy the sound of it. Like, I really do.
Well, you wouldn't be totally alone,
I feel alone.
You'd mostly be alone.
I'm lonely.
You should be alone. Anyway, but the thing is, that's what I think I was getting to, but this is a 2-person show, so...
And I'm always interrupting you.
No, I really don't remember what exactly... I think I was going to say, though, I mean, I've always really enjoyed this record, too. And... because to me the Ramones are just a perfect rock and roll band. That's the thing. So to me, what I hear in the Ramones is early 60s rock and roll. A synthesis with the guitar, with the aggression and everything of that had come about in the late 60s, and groups like the Stooges and the New York Dolls and others. At the core, it's that early 60s, just pure rock and roll. Of course, that's what this album is. It's just, it's the Ramones doing a pure rock and roll record with arguably the most famous rock and roll producer. I said it before. I know the thing about the line in Birdcage when Nathan Lane does the John Wayne impression, and he says, he's like, no, it's perfect. I just never realized John Wayne walked that way.
Right.
That's why it's kind of this album too. It's like, no, it's perfect actually. I just never realized Phil Spector. Like of course that's what Phil Spector producing the Ramones would sound like. You know what I mean? It's like it's
exactly
actually
what you would expect.
Exactly right. Yeah. It's just I never really thought that. I never thought about it. I never realized that it would. I don't know. It's just I don't know. what I'm sort of is getting at is I didn't have any sort of I didn't think of the Ramones as just a punk band. I thought of them as a rock and roll band.
Right.
So them doing a Phil Spector straightforward rock and roll, production.
It doesn't seem out of character or
no, and I mean
strange.
it certainly is an interesting thing for them to do, and you could look at it almost as a kind of a concept album, as like the Ramones rock and roll radio. It starts with like you turn on the radio. This is like you're listening to rock and roll radio.
Totally,
so
it is
all of
totally
these
themed.
songs, and they're all different, and the production varies, so it's not always the same. You do have the songs where the guitar is front and center, and it sounds like more of a what you'd expect from the Ramones, although I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
Something more aggressive and with very loud guitar. Then you have things like Danny Says, which are very Beach Boys-ish, and I think most people love that song. Even if they don't really like the album, there are usually a couple of songs that I think everyone still, they like a few songs off the album.
Right, no one just like pans the whole album.
No, they're not. Oh my God!
Like
I
there's
mean, mostly,
nothing, no redeeming qualities.
No, mostly they just wish that it were remixed. I mean, if anything, they want to hear the songs. They just don't want to hear, all the sort of schmaltz on top of it, I suppose. But that's
it's the schmaltz that makes it great.
But I think what I was saying, I mean, that it is a rock and roll radio. Like you're listening to the radio. Right. And then it is kind of a throwback, but in the cleverest of ways.
I was gonna say something about this album kind of getting mixed up in like not revival.
Yeah.
But like a kind of like.
Yeah, well,
retro kind of thing.
The Ramones got mixed up in too many things that obfuscated how brilliant they were.
You mentioned how you always saw them as a rock and roll band versus like a punk band.
Yeah.
And then that's how, it's so easy to get into genre trouble, when someone, a critic or whatever, someone pegs a band with a label as like this kind of sound. And you might be like, well, I always thought they were just doing rock and roll. They were doing the rock and roll songs that they love, They were trying to get a little bit away from that. Also, maybe have a little, success. Like, a hit would be nice. A little money.
Well, that's a couple of things.
Got some money?
They should have already had a hit.
Of course.
You listen to the first, at least Rocket to Russia and Road to Ruin. I can't believe the songs weren't
Those
hits.
albums are back-to-back, catchy, short, radio perfect songs.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Well, how is Rockaway Beach not a hit?
Right. Plus, they had the style. If you want to talk about things that people can grab a hold of,
right?
They had the right look. They had the style.
This wasn't. It's making it sound like because people would thought at the time like, oh, they're selling out. But I really feel like this album was really more about them just showing who they really were. Mm-hmm. Like we want to do a rock and roll album with one of the greatest rock and roll producers, and it still didn't work. Still didn't have a hit, which is amazing. It's such an interesting album. You have the anthemic songs like "Do You Remember Rock and Roll Radio" or "Let's Go,"
right?
Which are both very different and produced very differently. Then there are ballads. There are for me, if you're listening to it, it's really. It's almost like where is the guitar in the mix is sort of the interesting thing, because you have it, the guitar goes up and down throughout the whole album, where you have sometimes
it's more prominent.
Johnny's like really buried in the mix, then it's way out front. It's like Chinese Rock, Let's Go, but the guitar is way more front and center, and it's a more aggressive song.
And you like that?
Well, of course. But then it's also really interesting on, in some of the other songs where you have like Phil Spector mixing some of these songs like it's not the Ramones, almost. Like he's bringing out shades of other rock and roll sounds like through them.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of fun.
You know, and it is actually, if you look at it that way, and you don't have to, and you could say I'm just pulling this out of my rear end. I am, but I mean, you know, if you look at it that way, it's actually a really interesting album, and it's really hard to criticize because it's just so enjoyable.
Yeah, it's too much fun.
You know, I have a couple of criticisms. Well, one thing I don't really like, and they do this on Road to Ruin as well, so it's not just on this album. I don't like overdubbed guitar.
Yeah.
I don't really love it. I don't really like it. It doesn't ruin anything. I mean, it doesn't bother me.
You just don't need it.
But I wouldn't have done it. You know, it's kind of like, I forget. I don't. It's the CD. I haven't looked at the CD in a long time.
Steve Vai.
In the liner notes on the CD, one of them says like that Johnny was like the Link Ray of his generation.
I still let him play his guitar.
I don't want to hear someone playing solos over Link Ray either.
Right.
You know, I don't want Rumble, and then all of a sudden you got someone. You know, it just the simplicity of it, the way it rings out and everything about it. You know,
yeah, the style of it, the power of it.
Yeah, that's what I want to hear.
Yeah.
And it's somehow it's the one thing that, I mean, you know, the guitar can be higher in the mix, lower in the mix.
So you do want the naked version?
No. Well, I don't want to tell anyone, but whenever I listen to this, it's the naked version. That's why everyone has to leave when I put this on.
Get out!
They do that on Road to Ruin, and they do that here, and I don't like it.
I understand that.
The only thing I would say is I actually do think that the songs on Pleasant Dreams are a little stronger than this. And we talked about Pleasant Dreams, and I actually love that album. I mean, I think that album's underrated.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that.
I think that's... The production there has... I mean, we can talk about that too, which we did, I guess. But I'm
sure we did.
I just think that album has slightly stronger songs.
We didn't mention...
Although that really isn't a criticism of this album, just saying.
No, you're just being a jerk.
Sure.
One thing we didn't say is, you know, something that you always say, how great Joey's vocals are.
Well, I was getting to that.
Well, let's get to it.
It's on my list.
All right, well,
it's in my notes.
It's in your bucket list?
One of the greatest rock and roll singers ever. I mean, there's no question. And if nothing else, this album's worth listening to just for him.
Yeah. His, like, song styling on these songs is just really lovely. I mean, it's just so fun to listen to.
We were just talking about the Beach Boys disco song, and the Ramones had a kind of inadvertent disco song here.
It's not.
But it's not. And this was kind of funny. I know. That's what the song sounds like. You know, like string section. You know, Phil Spector did that kind of stuff in the early 60s. I mean, I don't...
It wasn't like... It's not a disco song.
It wasn't... I don't really think anyone intended it to be, but it was taken as such.
That is the Beach...
No, the Beach Boys one was...
That is a disco song. Yeah. This, I don't.
Bruce, you got a lot of explaining to do. Joey sings that so well.
Oh, yeah.
He sings it so well. Possibly my favorite song on the album, though, is I Can't Make It on Time. I think that is one
great.
Of the all-time great Ramones songs.
It's perfect. Yeah. I love the structure of it. I love the melody. I love how he sings it. Everything about it. The lyrics.
That
it's
also
just so great.
Became at least 6 or 7 Stroke songs.
Yes. I feel like Julian Casablancas listened to that song and probably sang along with it a ton, and that's what you get.
He would have sung, but he did sing, if he sang at all. To say about, no matter how crazy Phil Spector is, I mean, his work, the Crystals, the Ronettes, everything that he did.
You cannot take away.
I mean, I love the sound of it. I mean, you know, it's not like an academic thing. Those are
gunshots.
Incredible. You know, it's just incredible work, and you do hear that here. You know, which I like, and that's the thing. So I think what you get out of this album, it really depends on how much you
like music.
You like Phil Spector, you like early 60s rock and roll, if you really do listen to that.
If you appreciate
and, you know, and
the history.
Understand sort of what the Ramones were going for. to announce to everyone that they were a rock and roll band and that they were at the time the greatest rock and roll band. And, you know, unfortunately, like they really always were a little misunderstood. You know, it wasn't the Animals. It was the Ramones. I just love his intentions are good. Oh Lord, please don't let me be misunderstood. We both did the same part. That's terrible. What cornballs, man.
You have to keep that in. Hopefully, you don't get claimed.
It was. So, I think it was off key enough that it may not be claimed. Anyway, because they never did this again. You know, this is a one-off. They never worked with Phil Spector again. They never did another, you know, just encapsulating all of rock and roll through the Ramones style kind of an album.
Right.
If you want to call it that. And, I mean, you know, that's what we are
do.
calling it. I am calling it, sort of. It's actually a really fantastic thing. It really is. I mean, I'm glad they did it. I'm glad that they, you know, they wouldn't have had a hit.
I love it.
They wouldn't have had a hit with the next album anyway. Oh my God! If Rock and Roll High School is not a massive hit,
what will it be? I said that weird. What will it be?
I would say just one thing, and it's kind of trite to say it. You know, I feel like everyone has to say it, and I'm sorry, but I do like the Heartbreakers version of Chinese rock better.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry.
Don't apologize to them. Apologize to them.
LAMF is also one of the most awesome, greatest rock and roll records.
LMAO.
Did we talk about that?
Yes.
Oh.
I think so. Yeah. I think so. Thank you so much for watching our brief discussion of this Ramones album, End of the Century. Make sure to like this video, subscribe to States and Kingdoms, and leave a comment. Let us know what you think. We'll see you next time.